What's happening? What's happening? What's happening, blues people? I'm extremely excited today. I have some great guests. I want to go through a couple of things real quick as we introduce the show and our guests. So, as you all know, this is Jack Dapper Blues and Jack Dapper Blues uh, platform, but this is one of our babies. And so I'm presenting once again Black spirituals, field hollers, and slave seculars, which is a specific component of the Jack Dapper Blues Heritage Preservation Foundation. Black spirituals, field hollers, and slave seculars celebrates Black American traditional music and experience. This particular show, which also has a Facebook group, which is very active, is dedicated to sharing and raising awareness of folk life, songs, dance, scripture, lyrics, and everything related to Black folk belief and spirituals, field hollers, and slave secular expressions, as well as the coded songs of Black spirituals that were mapped and landmarks for escaping bondage. And we have two awesome guest today that actually not only speaks to that, but worked on a project imperative to that. We're going to show it again. Okay. And this is the album cover. Okay. So today I'm speaking with Eric Crawford and Peter Siegal. Peter Siegal is a producer and American Roots music archivist who recorded this masterful album, which will be released June 14th, 2024 by Smithsonian Folkways. It's called The Complete Friends of Old Time Music Concert. And it's performed by Bessie Jones, John Davis, and the Georgia Sea Island Singers with Mississippi Fred McDowell and Ed Young. The album is a live recording of a 1965 concert that captured the intersection of Black folk traditions and civil rights activism. Produced and hosted by folklorist Alan Lomax of the Lomax family. Again, recorded by Peter Siegal. Now, in celebrating Black Music History Month, it is imperative that we not only conduct this interview today, but let you all be aware that June 14th, this album will be released. And according to what Mr. Peters said, you can pre-order the album right now, if I'm not mistaken, on the Smithsonian Folkways website. So we're gonna, and just so you all know, the audience members, you understand, first you could chime in. Second, this is how we celebrate Black Music History Month. This is what it should look like. Celebration, informing, raising awareness, conserving, right? So the liner notes and essays, main essay was written by Eric Crawford, whose research focuses on the rich tradition of Gullah music. Crawford has also written books titled Gullah Spirituals, The Sound of Freedom and Protest in the South Carolina Sea Islands, and Gullah Culture in America. And I didn't tell him, but I have to throw this out there. He was also the music consultant for Amazon Prime's The Underground Railroad and Catch Him in Henry Louis Gates' documentary. Mr. Siegal personally recorded this album in 1965, almost 60 years ago. Later, he produced this album, the entire concert that's going to be released that we're discussing today. He has also produced numerous albums by great traditional musicians, including Doc Watson. I know y'all know who that is. Joseph Spence, Clarence Ashley, Hazel Dickens, and Alice Gerard. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. Gentlemen, how are you this afternoon?
Doing well, doing well.
Thank you. It's great to see you, Lamont. Thanks for having us.
Not a problem. I know that was such a mouthful, but we always have to give it context, and thank you to public radio and NPR. I am never shy of giving context. So now, before we get into this, and when I say into this, the significance of this project, and the longevity, right? It's almost a timeless peek into Black folklore and folk life, right? I just want to set up, from the two of you personally, your connection with the project as it pertains to your professional interests and your personal interests. So we'll start with Peter, and then we'll go to Eric, please.
Well, thanks, Lamont. This is a concert that I think is very well suited to be presented in its entirety, because every song on it is very strong, and every song has a reason for being there. Alan Lomax had a gift for putting together traditional artists from different traditions, and in this case, he put together the Georgia Sea Island Singers with Mississippi Fred McDowell, a great blues singer, and Ed Young, who represents an old tradition of black cane fife music in Mississippi. I just think we were able to present the entire concert, every song, all 25 songs that were performed that night. I removed some announcements and talk in between the songs to make it a little more listenable, and also because the album fills out pretty much as much time as you can get on a CD. But every song is there in the order that they were performed, with occasional announcements by Alan Lomax explaining what some of the music is, and with some spoken introductions by the artists themselves. And I know Eric will have a lot to say about where these artists are coming from, but I think it's a really strong album, and I'm really proud to be associated with it.
Thank you, sir. Eric?
Yes, this is Bessie Jones, who I think Lomax called her something like the mother of all African American folk traditions. She is just someone that I've admired and followed, and being able to be a part of this project for me was just it was my proudest moment so far, because hearing and not be able to rely upon video, but just simply hearing her. And, I'd always heard about her tambourine playing and improvisation and John Davis, but be able to hear over and over and over these songs, you really realize how fantastic these and first rate these musicians were. And unfortunately, they've been forgotten. And so for me, being able to have a small part and bring them back to today is just fantastic.
It's just amazing that you started with that hearing instead of seeing, because that's something I wanted to discuss, right? How, and this is for both of you, because again, this is an example of, I guess, the timelessness of culture, right? How you go between preserving and conserving, because it's in a place, but it's not stuck there. And the reason why I continue to drive that home, because Peter, you listen to this then and there, right?
Yes,
and
absolutely.
You're listening, right? Something that's possibly 100 years old.
Well, the music goes back over that, longer than that. Eric will talk about that, yeah.
Right. And then, Eric, you're listening to this to write the liner notes. Again, the performance is about 50 years old. But again, the music, so that means if the music is a couple of 100 years old from when Peter records it, and then when you're listening to it, you know, how does that inform the project for the two of you, that you're able to kind of hear ancestral expressions in this way?
One thing that I'll say is that when you listen to this music, you'll hear not only feet and you'll hear not only singing and hand clapping and tambourine, but you'll hear feet because this music was danced. And I was very conscious in working with the sound on this album to make sure you could hear the sound of the dancers dancing on the wood floor of the auditorium because that sort of forms a if there's anything like a bass line in this music, it would be those feet, and that gives it a lot of punch. You know, I mean, there's a lot of bass there, a lot of really percussive sounds, and also from time to time on the album, you'll hear John Davis, who is banging on the floor with a rhythmically with a heavy walking stick, which was part of the tradition, and so I was very conscious when I was working with the sound on this album to make sure we preserved the rhythmic impact of the feet and the walking stick on the wooden floor. Gives it a lot of punch, I think.
Yeah, it does, and I wasn't even aware that John had a stick, but I'm so glad you emphasized hearing those footsteps because some of those songs were ring shouting songs that were steps, and hearing those feet. Okay, I know this is a ring shout song now, and I'm so glad you added that piece, Peter. That was brilliant.
Yeah, you know, what amazed me first and foremost was the clarity and technical so for it to be recorded on the spot in 1965 and there was analog, and then for it to sound the way it sounds today was kind of amazing to me because you wouldn't think to have such a clear sound from a live concert the way it was. But I have to ask Eric, I have to ask you this because you brought something up and we can't leave the audience hanging because I know some audience members either may not know what it is or may not be 100% clear what a ring shout is. Could you please share with us what that is?
Right. So it's a counterclockwise dance that was done in the small structure with that wood floor, Peter, as I mentioned. And so, like down to the mire, you know, that's a ring shout piece there, and they're circling around, you know, this. And what's fascinating is that Bessie Jones wasn't a good ring shouter. So she would always kind of be apart from them oftentimes because she couldn't get her feet moving correctly. And so, so she urges them on, she'll sing, but she oftentimes isn't trying to, because it's a shuffle dance moving counterclockwise. And I missed that she never quite mastered that.
That's
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, I think in the buzzer lope dance, you can hear, is John Davis performing within the ring on that one?
Yes, that's the one, a ring shout. That's a solo dance. And John Davis, oh my gosh, he is dancing. And there's a YouTube clip of it, but you can really see the connections to things like the tap dancing and moving because he's really doing this intricate dance there.
And you can really hear that on the record. And I know we'll talk a little more about that song because there's plenty to be said about that one.
Well, you know what I would like to do before I ask you more other questions, I would like us to go to a song that is early on the piece, but all of the songs kind of gave me goosebumps, but this particular song, as a folklorist and ethnomusicologist and traditional Black music practitioner, I felt it was imperative that we discuss this, particularly for Black Music History Month and the framing of this wonderful project. Matter of fact, I'm going to play it and then we'll discuss it.
they're using for and on time. And that we had to clap on time, sing on time, move on time. So we want to show you just a little about clapping hands. In the midst of your hand here, take your 4 fingers here and let your hand give a little curve in there, just a little to make the catch the wind in there, see? Right there. That's wonderful. That's good. Now that's called a baritone clap. And now you go up there on your finger and get the tenor clap. Come on, just on your tenor, on your hand, up on your fingers. That's good. But thank you. Now we're going around. Let your 2 palms meet in here. Let your hand go here. We have a bass clap. Let's go. See? All right. If you get those claps together and have a bunch to do one thing, a bunch to do another, you have a great thing. Sometimes you have all double bass, double tenor. So, and that way, and double whatnot. So we're going to clap a little bit now, show you a little back there. All right, y'all join me. Well, my feet are off beat. I want you to learn that too. You had your feet like a drum, off beat, see? Hear that? All right, Mr. Ed. He's going to show you how the little playboy play around the yard with his flute when he's doing that.
Talk to us about that piece right there. Anyone jump in, please, because there's a lot right there to unpack.
Well, folklorists often talk about African retentions in American music. And I know that Eric has made a study of tracing exactly where these different traditions have come from. I'll just say, as a music fan, you don't really need to be a folklorist to get the sense of African music in this piece as it's been transported to the New World. I know Eric will say some more about it, but when I first heard that, I was like, wow, this is happening in the United States in 1965. Eric, do you want to comment on that?
Well, the drums were banned, this is the 19th century. And so the enslaved Africans, and the drums, of course, were tonal. You had different tones for those drums. They were talking drums. And so, but, they cleverly applied the drums to their hands. And so they were still able to get those different tones. And because their language was also tonal, they could still speak. And so, as you're doing the baritone clap and the tenor and the alto, not only are you talking musically, but actually through a language, you're able to communicate each other. And so it just shows you that though it seems very simple, it's a very complex process.
So now, what I love about it is, and I would like you all to chime in on this, Bessie gives a kind of, she puts into context the use of the hand clap for this performance. And she's engaging with the audience in this fashion. And I would like both, one, Peter, please think about if you can remember sitting there, because one of the biggest things that, at least that I've been seeing, is tradition bearers are looked at as a novelty, right? And it's like, okay, well, we do this thing, and it is really sacred. Don't get me wrong, but so please forgive me how I frame this, but it's never presented as if the performers are professional performers and know how to interact with the audience and kind of go into this in a certain way, right? What did you get from this performance? Is Bessie, is John, Fred, are these folk professional musicians as well as tradition bearers? Is it the same thing, or is there a difference?
I want to take that in a slightly different way and say that the Georgia Sea Island singers, particularly Bessie Jones, John Davis, and Mabel Hillary, had a very profound belief that by informing a people about their past, they can influence the future. And they performed, they became major voices in the civil rights movement. They performed at concerts that were presented by the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and the Southern Christian Leadership. And basically at those concerts, they spoke very eloquently about the importance of understanding the roots of this music. And they did end up exerting a real direction in their music. Bessie Jones said, in order to get to the top, you have to realize what the bottom was like, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And she was really, that was really important to them. And it comes through a little bit on this album. Eric, do you want to talk about that?
Right. You know, I think a figure who was in the background, mixing up combinations of singers and promoting certain songs was Alan Lomax. You know, and I think he knew, you know, this is 1965 now, and you know, civil rights is at the height of that movement, and you know, it's no coincidence that there's certain songs being done, and for him, I think there's an important social message as well. And Bessie Jones was, I think, for me, she was always a great teacher. You know, for her, it was not enough to just perform. You know, it was always important for her to share, you know, what she's doing and why she's doing it. And for her, you know, it was a unity was utmost of the races for people of the movement. You know, and as Peter said, you know, she fought for their voices within the movement, because some wanted to do R&B songs for freedom songs, and there were many done, you know, but she said, no, you know, these spirituals, you know, that they were important a century ago for our freedom, and they're equally important for this freedom for civil rights now.
You know, I love it. And just for clarity, there's an extreme social implication on Black traditional music that we carry and exude. So there was not the question was not necessarily extracting the social impact. We were going to get to that. So let me just be clear about the question. Right? It's okay. Because see, the reason why I want to be clear about the question is because a listener may think that the question was minimizing their intention, but you answered it correctly, because you did actually answer the question, but I want to be clear of the framing so the audience understands that there is a separation by some folk who don't understand the role of a tradition bearer as a performer, and they don't think that these things that you two mentioned are intentional. So it's considered a novelty when it's actually. Go ahead.
These people were working artists. They were on the road. They played at the Ash Grove in California. They played at folk festivals. They showed up everywhere. They played in Central Park in New York. They collaborated with many of the big stars of the folk revival. I mean, these were professional musicians. There's no doubt about it.
That also, as the two of you share, thought it important and significant to make sure the social context, the roots and connection was at the forefront, right? So I do have a question after reading the liner notes and the essays. I would like, Eric, please walk us through the quick history of the shanty music of the Gullah Geechee and how that shows in this particular album recorded by Peter.
Well, in terms of the background, well, first of all, I think it's important to kind of note that John Davis and maybe his brother as well, and maybe others, and they were essentially stevedores. You know, they were working on the docks. You know, and that was their background. And I think it's important that many of those songs were oftentimes crafted and sung as part of that. In fact, there was a smaller local group that they would have of these longshoremen, and so I think for them there was always this sense of the songs from the community. And John Davis was an important leader of the community, and so though Bessie Jones was and Peter, maybe I could be incorrect, but Bessie was probably the spiritual leader, you know, and the voice. But John was maybe it's backwards. Maybe Bessie was the song leader and the force who was in charge of a group. But John was a spiritual leader and the leader of that community. And so, you know, I think he always had a say as to the group makeup and what they were doing. And so, but anyway, his background again was that. And so, in terms of their songs, the songs always came from the community, be it on the docks, be it on the shout, be it on what was happening social, yeah, be it. And so that was the ground from which they were forged. And so when they're now placed on stage, that becomes very evident as to, and of course Alan had something to do with those, but it's important to kind of note that those songs are tied to where they came from. And go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that on this album, there is a whole set, if you will, of work songs, including the shanties. And they had actually organized their performance, and it's reflected in the structure of the album. There's a set of work songs, there's a set of Bible stories, there's a set of blues, and so they had actually planned this quite carefully. I'm sure they worked with Alan on this too. But there's this song called "Goodbye My Riley-O," which is a famous work song that it's just so powerful. I mean, and you can see how they use the rhythms of those work songs to make their work easier.
And to a point, they had this grunt, which I think you will hear time and time again, and that came from, you know, they would pull these huge logs making these ships, and that grunt was part of their singing, you know. So you hear the and that was a unique feature of this group. I mean, that grunting is like, wow, here it goes again.
You know, first and foremost, I have to say, if nothing else, Peter has done these interviews many times, or you're just in my brain because you went into you movie. Because I did want us to speak about the way it was structured in regards to how the different styles of Black traditional songs was. And I'm just happy you brought that up. I wanted to chime off of Eric. But the grunts reminded me of, I was listening to that and I started looking around, and that's when I started going through the liner notes again, because I was like, is Zora Hurston part of this? Because I just started hearing her with the grunts. I want to go into a song real quick, because one of my most favorite things about Fred McDowell is his interconnection and changeability of blues and spirituals. And there's this song he does with Mabel. Matter of fact, I would like to go into it. Once I stop, I'm not going to say anything. I want you two to carry this conversation.
Don't ever leave me, baby. Please don't leave me all alone. Please don't leave me, baby. Please don't leave me all alone. Because you know that I love you. I don't love nobody else. When you met me this morning, I was laying down in my bed. When you met me this morning, I was laying down in my bed. I said, I wonder where my baby, and I know he can't be found.
You know, I did say I wasn't going to say nothing, but I have to. I chose that song specifically because, for me, and we could start here if you would like. Mabel conjured Jesse May Hemphill, or possibly the other way around. Talk to us about that particular cut, y'all.
Mabel was just as important as Bessie was for leading and setting a song and so forth. And Emma was always Bessie's sidekick. You know, they were always right there. But the person who equaled Bessie vocally and who pushed that group right to the edge, oftentimes, of jazz and blues was Mabel. And who had a notable career as a jazz singer or a blues singer, as you know. But that was a force of nature there. And I wish I could have been a fly on the wall just to be there to hear her sing, because she was truly a gifted one. And as I told you, I think in our earlier discussion, the Jodecian singers had a group, even Pierre Davis's, I mean, they were a fantastic group of singers and musicians who have been overlooked, and that's a shame. I mean, I would hasten to say you can't find a better group of singers anywhere, ever.
When this album was getting ready to come out, I showed the album cover to a friend of mine who didn't know anything about this group, and she said, it must have been amazing to hear them in the room. And you can see it, you know, it's powerful. Yeah. Yep, there they are. And that is the group that's on this album. From left to right is Mabel Hillary, John Davis, Emma Ramsey. That's Ed Young in the middle, then Bessie, and then on the right, Peter Davis, who was also a fantastic singer and song leader. Well, you'll hear him do some songs on there that he's just amazing. They're all amazing.
So in the process, because, you know, Well, before we get to the process, this is more a contextualized questions about traditional expression. Work song, blues, and spiritual, and game songs, what they kind of present. And there's a thread that goes through these songs that almost, if you just listen, when I say the superficial ear, you may not be able to distinguish between any of these because they kind of have a similar sound. Could you talk to us the significance of each individual actual expression and what makes each one its own individual part of the Black traditional sound?
Yeah, I think all those different song forms or song types, it just gives you a comprehensive, a kaleidoscope perhaps of the Gullah Geechee traditional, in terms of our music, starting from a small child, and you have those games to, you're now employed and on work songs, and you have the praise house, the shout, and so it gives you an idea of their own life, and though they're game songs, they were very important game songs. It's like Josephine, it begins, and I asked Peter, well, Peter, um, who was the a small child doing that?
Well, I basically the full-grown Emma Ramsey and Mabel Hillary are playing the part of children on that song, and you'll hear Bessie say, "This is the way they used to ask for it when they were children." I think it's important, and I've seen this with a lot of the musicians I've recorded who represent older traditions. These people grew up in a time and place where there was no records, there was no internet, there was no radio, and they learned their music from other community members, from their parents, occasionally from itinerant musicians who would pass through. And so you get a very strong and very specific understanding of the way these people lived, because this music is the accompaniment and a driving force in their own life. It's not something they learned from the radio; they lived it, and that is, it's just contributes in a very strong way to the power of this music.
You know what, Peter, this question is for you. For someone who spent a career recording and documenting traditional artists, I guess it's a two-part question. What is the definition of folk music to you? And does this album encapsulate the actual idea of folk tradition?
Wow. I'm going to pass on the first question, the definition, because it's a fluid thing, and it depends who you ask. But what I will say is that there is a richness to culturally specific music. And when we hear the term culturally specific today, we mean, African American music or white folk music. But I'm talking about culturally specific in the sense that it comes from a very specific community, and it imbues the way people grow up, the way they teach their children, and there are some. I've studied some Appalachian dance music, fiddle tunes. I recorded an album which included Doc Watson and his father-in-law, Gaither Carlton. And as a fiddle player, Gaither Carlton has a rhythm and a time feeling which is quite specific to exactly where he comes from. He comes from a certain place in western North Carolina. He was a real old mountain man. You go over a couple of mountains and valleys, and it sounds different. So you get a kind of richness and specificity that tends over time through mass communications. It gets simplified just a little bit. But in the if you listen to I want to say if you listen on this album to Bessie Smith sing a song like "Sign of the Judgment," you hear a kind of singing that you don't hear anywhere else. When you hear the specific way in which this group responds to her, you hear a kind of interaction. And I'm not saying it's better or worse than anything else. I'm just saying that this is their music. This is the music from St. Simon's Island in the Georgia Sea Islands. This is music of a community that was separate because of their physical location, to the point where they passed down songs from slavery days, really. And I think we probably ought to at some point touch on some of the content of these songs. I mean, it's pretty chilling stuff. Maybe Eric might like to talk about the song "In That Old Field," which is
Oh, yes.
an accompaniment to the dance, the buzzard lope dance, and it has a very strange sort of relationship to the dance. Eric, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, because
Right.
I'll play it after you talk about it.
Right.
Great.
And this buzzard lope, you have this John Davis who oftentimes would dance it, and there would be a handkerchief that would be in the middle, and the singers are in a circle around them, and it was and you had this buzzard who's going in and picking at this handkerchief, replicating the sense of a buzzard picking on dead animals, dead cows in the field, where oftentimes the owners would put the animals in the field there, off just out there in the open, and buzzards would of course go and eat their flesh. Well, the enslaved would be thrown out the same way once they died. And so in this song, the enslaved is commenting through song about, you throw me in that old field just like you did those animals. And so though it's a fun song and dance, that's the background of that piece in that old field.
So,
Throw me in.
no. I want you to stay there because that's something that I find, and actually, just on a personal connection, I was I don't know if I was writing a song or rehearsing for upcoming performance, and my wife comes, "Hey, I want to do a video dancing to your song," and I was like, "Well, which one?" And she said, "Well, that song right there." I said, "Well, this song is about the tornado that could whip through here. Do you really want to dance to this?" And so it's kind of like this idea of the celebratory physicality of Black music juxtaposed to a reality that may not be, should be celebrated. Is this kind of what we're discussing with the lyrical content with some of these songs?
Yeah, and I think some of maybe that spirituality comes across in the performance. The singers know what it's about, and so though they don't say it to the audience openly, there's a sense of there's more to this than I can put my hand upon, my fingers upon, but that comes across, and as well as of course the Gullah Geechee language in that old field, there's no D there, and so all that's coming across, and it makes this, as Peter mentioned, unique and specific to that St. Simon Island.
So would that also play into coded language and this idea of a double consciousness?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to play some of the song. Then I really would like you all to discuss, and you both mentioned it briefly in your answers. I would like you to dive more into the idea of having to focus on what could be considered language barriers, maybe not, but it's because they have a particular language that may not be consumable for all consumers. How did you guys work around that? So I'll play some of the song and we can talk about that.
The floor, as it would be old dead cow, hog, or something. You used to have boneyards, you know. They used to throw them out on the woods and play called the boneyard. But the buzzard had something to eat. And also the song that we sang was the song that the old people was interpreting, telling the people they didn't care what they do with their body. They said their soul lay with God. Throw me anywhere in that old field. Throw me anywhere, Lord, 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 in that old field. You may beat and bang me in that old field. Yes, can't Jesus save me in that old field? Don't care how you treat me. Can't Jesus meet me in that old field? Throw me anywhere, Lord. Throw me anywhere, Lord. Throw me anywhere, Lord. Throw me anywhere, Lord. Oh, field. Don't care how you use me. Since can't Jesus choose me in that old field? You may beat and bang me.
I can just listen to Bessie Jones all day. I don't think I shared the story with you, Peter. I might have told this to Eric one too many times. But I grew up in the church in Queens, New York, called Rescue Church of Christ. Before it got the big church across the street, it was a little storefront church. And it was so traditional, but every time I hear Bessie Jones, it brings me back to being a little guy, not really wanting to be there until Sister Lot, who was a choir leader and a usher. When she got up to either testify or lead the choir in song, and so when I hear Bessie Jones, it brings me to this sister, bless the dead, because there's a connection between these two. They and so it's just really, really relevant to my life, Bessie, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to say civil rights so we don't forget, because there's a story we want to get to. But before we do that, let's go into the language of the Gullah and how it transcends to audience members that may not know that it's a Gullah language. They could think it's what's considered Black English or broken language, right? Could we discuss that in this project, please?
Yeah, there are many examples of them singing, their Gullah, and oftentimes you might think it's incorrect. Like there's a song title, "Who Built the Ark?" Not built, but because in the West African languages there is no difference in a past to present, so they wouldn't think who built. They would say who built the ark, and so and somebody who thinking, oh, that's just bad English, wouldn't think about that, And of course, they can pronounce those THs, of course, oftentimes, and it's going to be a D sound, But it's for me, it was real liberating. I think I asked Peter and others, should we do something in Gullah, and adhere to some of these actual spellings? And they said, well, go ahead. I said, oh, great, And so this is probably one of the first projects that I can recall that we can actually see what they're actually speaking or singing, though they may alter sometimes, but this is what they were thinking. This is their language, and that was important that we infuse that here.
Eric wrote a nice little short piece about the Gullah language, which is in the album booklet, that pretty much explains what it is in a very short form.
I just wanted to make sure that the audience knows the essays that are part of this project. The main essay was written by Dr. Eric Crawford, also written by Peter, who recorded the project, but also a very important piece to the puzzle, who is a archivalist and a great musician, Nathan Salzberg, wrote the Folk Revival Years.
Yes.
So I just want to make sure that was mentioned in the project. Now, Peter, you spoke about civil rights a lot. Eric spoke about it. What I want to bring up is not just their work in song and civil rights, even as it played out in this project, but there's a legend, which is actually true, that I don't know many people know Bessie's role in the civil rights movement and how the soundtrack became the soundtrack. Could you talk to us about that?
Wow. The best way to really learn about that is by reading Nathan Salzberg's essay in the booklet. But were you planning on playing the song called "Marching on the Mississippi Line"?
I did not tell you, not only has he done this before, he's in my brain. I'm looking at it's right here. Yes. That was
Good.
wonderful. Yes, I do, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, this group not only had very strong convictions about how their traditional music could inform the future, they also performed a few songs which were quite specific, topical songs, if you will, about the civil rights movement. That is not the preponderance of their work, but they show up, and there's one which will give you an idea that Mabel Hillary wrote called "Marching on the Mississippi Line," and she wrote it as a way to narrate aspects of the way to narrate aspects of the civil rights movement as they were happening. If you play a little bit of this, she gives you a whole little history here.
I'm definitely going to play that song, and I just wanted to apologize to Peter. I was trying to cue it up, and I didn't mean for that to go by.
That's all fine. A little extra music never hurt.
Brother E, thank you for tuning in. He's another great musician who performed with his daughter recently at a great festival out here down the way in Brownsville, Tennessee. Let's get this song going real quick, and we could talk more about it, because that was another song. All these songs gives goosebumps. I just want y'all to know.
I sat home and I watched the television, and I feel a little guilty about the people's marching in Mississippi and in Alabama, because I can't be there with them. So as they do different series of their marches, well, I put them together and kind of make a little song. If I can't march, I can sing. Whoa, my God, he said, seek and ye shall find. You know, he said, who ask and it shall be given. My God, he said, seek and ye shall find. He said he'd move all while he said he'd move him all time. Oh, when you marching on the Mississippi line, children, when you marching on the Mississippi line, children, when you marching on the Mississippi line, don't you forget you need the Lord by your side. Some people say Cain don't believe in the Lord. Some people say Cain don't believe in the Lord. Some people say Cain don't believe in the Lord. Well, if he didn't, how would the man ever survive? Well,
So let's talk first and foremost. Let me just tell the audience members these images that I'm showing come from the actual project promotion and package of this historical and wonderful album. Let's just start there.
48-page book, folks.
That has a lot of information, and let's talk about Mabel giving context to the song, right? And then I would like Eric to discuss about that meeting of civil rights leaders. So could we? So you were there, Peter. What was the room? What's the term they use nowadays? The temperature. What was the temperature in the room when Mabel expressed this and then goes into the song?
I think at that time you had a group of people. This is 1965. It was the height of the civil rights movement. It was also the height of what was then called the folk revival. And this took place in the auditorium of the New School, a college smack in the middle of what was then called Greenwich Village. And it attracted a very socially conscious audience, to say the least. And in a certain way, you could really feel the way the audience emotionally tuned in on these singers. And again, this was music that most of the people in the audience had never heard before, didn't know what to expect. They came because the concert was advertised as a real cultural phenomenon that they hoped to hear. But these people were listening. And there's also this thing which happens within this group, which happens within a number of groups. There are different facets of the music. I mean, Bessie Jones expressed her social consciousness through a very conscious performance of traditional music. Mabel Hillary wrote songs about it. There are just very different aspects. John Davis was like the wise old grandpa in this group. He understood everything. He held it together, but there were different feelings. There you might hear that in some groups of religious people, both white and black, that there are some feelings that say blues and church music don't go together. And when Mabel Hillary sang the blues, the group raised their eyebrows a little bit, but they had a bigger purpose. And so you see like a whole community within this little group of people. It's fascinating, and the audience was really attuned to that.
Before we go into Bessie, I wanted to ask you. You might have been going into that anyway, Eric. That little conflict between Bessie and Mabel.
Well, it's amazing. I think Bessie would always go to that edge and would always want it to be known that it was first and foremost sacred and based in the church. And Mabel would cross that line back and forth. And that was an issue. And so, but it's sad that that they couldn't have coexisted longer, because what they were able to do together, though I'm sure there was an obvious conflict, but musically it pushed them both, I believe.
So before we go into that civil rights conversation, I think it is important to kind of interrogate this inner communal idea of the people of the church and the people of the blues. John Wesley Works spoke a lot about that. And so we have this family ultimately, right? The Georgia Sea Island Singers are a family, and within this family who travel together, perform together, eat together, and pray together, there's these two factions of Black ideology that is kind of combated in regards to the culture of the blues, juxtapose the culture of, as John Wesley Works would say, the people of the church, right? When in your studies and in your recording of this concert, did you see or have you found, Eric, have you found, Peter, did you witness behaviors or actually actions that played out these things?
I'm glad you asked Eric that one.
You know, there are some things that probably shouldn't be said, but I will say that Bessie was the church mother, and Emma was always there with her, and you know, was faithful to the end. But you know, there was always this sense of there was some strain there, you know, and just kind of a short little comment is that many of the singers, you know, wouldn't go on unless they had a sip of something. And they would comment that they would sing better with that. And, you know,
Bessie didn't like that.
Yes, but and so that was a conflict, you know, and yeah, but you know, but of course, every groups have all those issues anyway. But
Right.
yeah.
Well, could real quick before we move into the civil rights segment, and then I don't want to keep you guys too long because we can speak about this forever. Could you give our audience a brief definition of what the church mother is and why that's significant to what we're discussing in this makeup of Black culture that's not monolithic, but kind of divides between blues and the church?
Well, I will say, Lomax initially asked Bessie to just come and sing by herself, perform by yourself. And Bessie says, "Oh no! This music is not singular. It's a sense of a communal. As I call, I need a response here, just like a pastor would." And she always saw it in the sense of being sacred, the sense of this is another church meeting, prayer meeting time now. And so that's why the issues of adding blues singers and blues, that was pushing it somewhere else that she didn't want to go.
Right. So to add to that for the audience, there is a title and position in the church, the Black church specifically. I'd imagine in other churches, but we're speaking the Black church, that is called the mother of the church. And this is usually the elder, more responsible, closer to God, that can recite Bible passages and who actually exemplifies the idea of a church-going person in the community. So that would describe Bessie.
And she would tell, and that church mother would tell you that dress is too short. Pull those pants up. All those little things. That mother would come to you and say that, and you had to say, "Yes, ma'am." Yes.
Yeah, we would. Yes, we would. So now, going back to the civil rights as we begin to tie this up. There is a meeting that happens. Eric, could you talk to us about this meeting with Bessie Jones and how she was significant to the civil rights movement?
Well, there was a meeting. It was orchestrated by, you have Guy Carawan and you have Alan Lomax and others who are promoting the idea of let's use these songs, these spirituals, as freedom songs. And the others, part of SNCC and so forth, who wanted to say, "Oh no, these are outdated songs here. Let's do more contemporary." And so they meet in these workshops. And there's a scene of Bessie Jones is there, and someone gets up and says, "We can hear that music at home, at church, why here? That's music of our parents. And Bessie Jones gets up, and again, I can only imagine there are many. In fact, there was some sneering, all the above going on. And again, she says this is a music that got us through, a slavery, and it is still important today. And just that, I wish I'd been there, but it was said that the following night, the Georgia Sea Island Singers performed, and they were the only group that got a standing ovation. So in that day before, she was able to change those minds and show how important it was that those spirituals formed the basis of those freedom songs, and how important they were.
Dig it. So with that, this is a perfect segue to, and we'll begin to wrap up. This is a perfect segue. Whoever wants to go first, why has it been significant for you all to work on this and for it to be released now in 2024, Black Music History Month, and everything else that's going on socially, politically? What made it significant right now for this to be released?
Well, okay.
Take it, Peter, please.
We are at a time when we need some strong voices of sanity in this country. And what you'll hear on this album is a whole little world of understanding of how the past can influence the future, of how traditions can hold a community together, how they can express themselves in very powerful music. And I just think that any little bit of help we can get in that direction is an important thing to work for. And we've worked together to bring this out.
Yeah, and I think, as I told you, Lamont, probably the most striking aspect of hearing these songs was how current they seem. To today's issues. That's perhaps sad, but how pertinent they are to today, and they have aged very, very well. And I think when you hear this music, it will speak to you and to what's important today.
So, that's another great segue. The significance to introduce this album, this concert, and this tradition of song to a new and even a new audience and a new generation of audience. Could you speak to that fact? No?
I just think it's something that people should hear and enjoy and learn from. I have learned a great deal from, even though I have heard the music a long time ago, I had the job. This music never saw the inside of a recording studio. I recorded it, I brought the tape home, and today now we have the technical capabilities of working to restore old recordings in the digital domain. And I worked, I spent a great deal of time basically restoring these old recordings, which is one of the reasons I think they sound pretty good. But that also meant I listened to it a lot, and I learned so much. And I also, when we started working together with Eric, I learned so much about what was really going on in the music. There's a lot to be learned here, and what I've learned has enriched my life immeasurably, and I think it has the possibility of enriching other people's lives.
And I would challenge anyone who hears this project to not have favorites. You would just be, let's play it again, let's play it again, let's play it over again. It has so much there, really so much there.
I dig it and I love it. I'm just really happy to have heard it and be able to talk to you all about it, particularly on this platform where we preserve, conserve, raise awareness of Black traditional music, folklore, folk life, and everything that goes with that. Where so again, where can they find the project? Because it can be pre-ordered, correct?
You can find this album anywhere where you get your music. There is a Smithsonian Folkways website where you can order it or order downloads. But if you're into buying music from Bandcamp, if you're into buying music from Amazon, whatever, you can order it from any of those places and you can listen to it as a digital online project if that's your preference, or you can buy the CD. I personally love the CD because it's a complete package. There's this booklet which guides you as you read through it with essays and photographs. But if your thing is to listen to music digitally, it's there for you, any place you get your music.
All right. Well, good folks, you heard it here. I don't know if it was first, but we're going to say it was.
I think it was first.
I think you're on. I think you're on number one.
Thank you. And just remember that in these performances, as great as the performances are, there are cultural references, nuances, and contexts that should be, taken into account and seriously when you all are listening. I want to thank you two for coming on. Come back again, and blues people. Before we go, let me get some announcements out. So first, we are accepting sponsored ads for the upcoming issue of the African American Folklorist. The last issue was with Shirley Moody Turner. This issue is with three brothers, urban folk artists. So we're still taking ads for that. You can also sponsor Jack Dapper Blues Heritage Preservation Foundation episodes or segments. Yes, preservation is in the name, but we also conserve. We don't always work to keep something in one place, but we like for it to breathe, live, and move forward. We conserve the blues people, traditions, folklore, folkways, folk life, life ways, intangible and tangible cultures. Be sure to subscribe, be sure to comment, be sure to share, be sure to submit if you want to write for anything or if you have anything that you want archived. I thank you two gentlemen again, and good folk, we'll be seeing you. Keep on bluesing.